someone's got to figure out a way to defeat this group. What would you do?
I think the first thing I would do is pray.
There is something to worry about, and that is the Houston Rockets.
So now you have Harden and you have Paul. And I know immediately it leads to, okay, but is this team good enough to beat Golden State?
They are the first team that was bred to kill the Warriors.
I mean, it's the only thing we think about. I think I'm not supposed to say that, but
the NBA's greatest team in the 2010s was the Golden State Warriors, exploding relatively out of nowhere. In 2015, this squad, led by their superstar guard, Steph Curry, took over the league and started winning championships fast. Soon they evolved from a rising contender to a monstrously stacked beast, the 73-win team that was one win away from repeating as champs added a top 2 player in Kevin Durant to their squad, making them borderline unstoppable. The season after signing KD, they bulldozed the league, going 16-1 in the postseason on their way to their second championship in 3 years. LeBron stood no chance. The veteran Spurs, coming off their dynasty, had no shot. Neither did the Lob City Clippers, all bent the knee and were at the mercy of this cruel super team that appeared to be the case until one man in Houston conspired a devious plan to overthrow this unstoppable force building. A roster with the sole intention of beating the Golden State Warriors. This is where our story begins. This is the tale of the NBA's greatest rivalry. Daryl Morey and the Houston Rockets were no strangers to competing for championships after the Rockets front office took a chance on the 23-year-old James Harden. They soon became a lasting contender, thanks to the Beard becoming a generational talent. Such a steal of a trade should have surely resulted in boundless success for this franchise, but instead, miserable heartbreak followed for a multitude of reasons. Come playoff time, these Rockets just couldn't get the job done. This was especially magnified in the spring of 2017, where a spectacular MVP-type season from Harden ended with a horrible low in the postseason. The Rocket, now with hopes of a possible championship run, got humiliated by the hobbled San Antonio Spurs in round 2. And 6, this series was a nightmare for James Harden in Game 2. He shot 3 of 17 from the floor, and in Game 5 he imploded in crunch time, having his attempt at a game winner. Gets swatted by a 39-year-old man. Joby away, this was bad. But the worst of the worst came in the elimination game. 6, where Harden borderline quit on his team, shooting 2 of 11 in an embarrassing blowout loss at home. This series was a major hit to his reputation, with some left wondering if such a choke had the potential to derail his entire career. Yikes, understanding all this misery is key because it highlights the desperation the Rockets were facing. Entering the summer of 2017, and beyond the strategy of surrounding James Harden with 3 and D players had failed Daryl Morey, the longtime executive and sharp basketball mind, set his sights on acquiring another star to add to the mix. Chris Paul, a star point guard, soon became the target, and on June 28, 2017, the deal that sent shockwave through the league was officially finalized. CP3 would be sent to Houston in exchange for a boatload of role players and a pick in an instant. One of the most fascinating duos in NBA history was formed, and immediately the fit between these two was questioned. Both needed the ball to succeed, both had fiery personalities, and both had overlapping play. Styles above all else, neither had experienced winning a championship, which was a huge stain on each of their careers. Now was the chance to silence their doubters. This deal, despite its critics, boosted the Rockets' championship odds to nearly the highest right, next to a familiar face over on the West Coast. Things were going smoothly for the defending champions. The Golden State Warriors had just effortlessly beaten the Cat Hales in 5. The arrival that had once given them nightmares was now nothing more than an insignificant doormat. They stepped on to grab their second ring. It was their first championship with Kevin Durant, whose decision to join the team made them so overpowered that most fans now consider them to be the greatest team in NBA history. Yes, this was the juggernaut the Rockets had overcome to make the NBA Finals sounds easy enough. It was only destiny that these two met for the first time on a much-anticipated opening night. The Warriors held ring ceremony commemorating their 2017 championship. The one and only team that stood in the way of a possible repeat was about to step on the court in this game. The Rockets performed about as well as one could hope for after falling behind by as much as 17 points in the third quarter. They stormed back in the fourth thanks to fantastic play from their role players in the closing seconds with Houston, leading by 1. The ball ricocheted into the hands of Kevin Durant, who quickly pulled up for a game-winning 2 that switched through the net fires. It will count. Confetti began falling. The Warriors started celebrating, and the Rockets hung their heads in shame. But then instant replay showed that the ball was just barely in Durant's hands, wiping away the basket and confirming a Rockets W. The Warriors, who had been jumping in jubilation from an all-too-familiar victory, had their bubble burst, thanks to KD's long fingers on a night where Chris Paul scored 4 points and where Nick Young hit 6 of 7 in threes. The Rockets had come out on top. A resounding message had been sent that echoed throughout the basketball world. The unstoppable Warriors had finally met their match. Let's play ball for the first time in 4 years. It wasn't Golden State that stood atop the Western Conference, but the Houston Rockets. They were led by the man who finally got his first MVP trophy. James Harden. He had craved the award for years, and he had won it thanks to his incredible stats and his 65 team wins. Now he needed just one more trophy to complete his career. The Larry O'Brien, of course. Only the Warriors stood in front of that, and I promise you that's not hyperbole. The Cavs, led by LeBron James, stood no chance against either. Neither did the Celtics, nor did anyone in the Western Conference. The rest of the league was one giant step behind these two squads. What people didn't realize was how the Rockets weren't just equal to Golden State, but in many ways had the advantage. This was most showcased in the final regular season matchup between these two on January 20th, 2018. The Warriors came into the Saturday night game with 14 straight wins on the road, the third longest streak in NBA history. Houston snapped it in large part thanks to the MVP's late game takeover with just a minute left. Harden ISO Steph Curry, hitting him with a signature step-back 3 to put the Rockets up by 6. Then on the other end, he blocked Curry's three-point attempt to seal the dub. The Rockets had won the season series 21 and had won the hearts of all Warriors haters everywhere. They were the greatest threat to the greatest team ever, and it showed in the numbers when all three of Clint Capella, James Harden, and Chris Paul played the Rockets, had a record of 42-3, yes, 42. And 3, they were unbeatable, and they were only focused on one team. The mastermind behind this group, Daryl Morey, acknowledged that the entire Rockets roster was built to beat the Warriors in this December 2017. He said that beating Golden State was the only thing we think about. They were obsessed. Warrior star Draymond Green later admitted that publicizing this info was a huge mistake by Mai, as it motivated his team even more to beat the Rockets. Where they made their biggest mistake was Daryl Morey coming out and saying, this team is built to beat the Warriors. Like, we built this team specifically to beat the Warriors. What I would say is Darryl Mo, Real G's moving silence on the Warriors' end of things. They had won 58 games in the 2017-18 season, earning the second seed, looking relatively dominant per usual. Despite what any record said with Stephen KD at the helm, the Warriors were favored by most to repeat and cement themselves as a dynasty. To no one's surprise, these two would eventually meet in the Western Conference Finals. The first 2 rounds of the playoffs for each went about as smooth sailing as you can imagine. For the Warriors, their most noteworthy moment came in Game 2 against the New Orleans Pelicans in the semifinals, where Steph Curry, who had missed 2 months of action due to a knee sprain, returned in triumphant fashion. Off the bench for scoring 28 for the Rockets, their memorable moment came in Game 5 against the Utah Jazz in the semifinals. In this closeout game, Chris Paul carried his team to his first ever conference finals appearance, scoring 41 points, 10 assists, and 7 rebounds. He took over in crunch time, scoring 6 straight field goals, including a triple that banked off the glass as the shot clock expired. It was a performance for the ages, and it truly convinced Rockets fans that, yes, this was finally their year. The matchup that the whole world had been waiting for was finally set. The 2-time champion, Warriors looking for a repeat, playing against the squad, built with the sole intention of defeating them with the Rockets, having all that, talking to narrative, what they've been saying about you guys. Did you guys at all want them as much as they wanted you? With them having said all that this season, we don't have to say nothing. What we doing, man? We won 2 championships in 3 years. We're not about to run off talking about how bad we want to play somebody. Like, we want to win another championship, and it don't matter who's in the way of that. If you in the way of that, then you happen to be in the way. But you know we're not about to run around like, yeah, we want to play them in the conference SP for what? Like it don't matter to us who we play, however we got them. All right now, let's get it first. Let's dispel some narratives about this famous series. One, the Warriors had all their stars healthy, but this team wasn't 100% Andre Iguodala. A key player for Golden State suffered a leg contusion injury in Game 3 that sidelined him for the rest of the series. That's not to imply the Rockets were 100%, either outside the obvious Chris Paul hamstring injury in Game 5. Key rotation piece Luke Bam was also hurting. Bam had been a steady bench player all year long for the team, but in a Mediless April game against the Lakers, he dislocated his shoulder on a routine dunk. His once reliable shooting completely deteriorated, following this rendering him useless, robbing the Rockets of what should have been a dependable bench piece. The second common narrative surrounding the series was that James Harden single-handedly almost dethroned the Warriors. This isn't necessarily true outside of Game 1. Harden's stats ran efficient in all three of the Rockets' wins. He shot 25 of 71 or 35% from the floor, including a Game 5 performance that saw him shoot just 5 of 21 in a close win. In reality, it was his teammates, more specifically Chris Paul, that guided the Rockets. Saint their wins with that, out the way Game 1 was in Houston the first time in the Steve Kerr era. Till that point that the Warriors were opening a playoff series on the road, still Golden State was favored to advance and proed their believers, right with a strong opening game. Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson both scored 38 and 27, while James Harden's 41 just wasn't enough. Houston had no answer. For KB's offense, the Slim Reaper was hitting contested shot after contested shot in the grill of any defender that was being thrown at him. This stellar play combined with the Rockets. Ben shooting 2 of 13 made this an easy Warriors win game. 2 was a must-win for the Rockets, as going down 2, heading back to Oakland, was an insurmountable deficit with their backs against the wall. They stepped up, destroying the Warriors to tie the series at 1. Eric Gordon stole the show with 27 points off the bench. Trevor Ariza and PJ Tucker were excellent too. Both combined for 41 on 15 of 18. Shooting on the other side, K-Dye was phenomenal again, but no one else helped him out. Steph Curry was quiet. He'd only put up 18 in Game 1 and 16 in Game 2. Luckily for the Warriors in Game 3, he broke out of his slump, scoring 35 points and a massive blowout, where the Warriors trounced Houston, winning by 41. Chris Paul played horribly, scoring just 3 points on 1 of 7 shooting in the first half. The lack of preparation the Rockets showed here was concerning. The Warriors' Poton offense killed Houston's defense, and now Golden State needed just one more win in Game 4 to take a commanding 3-1 lead. Since first being assembled in the summer of 2016, many teams had attempted to challenge this K and Curry lead Warrior squad and all had failed. The Rockets appeared to be next in line. Game 4 was not just the biggest game of the season for the Rockets, but one of the most important in their franchise's entire history. Today is the day the Houston Rockets basically have to win a basketball game if they are going to have any hope of advancing to the NBA Finals. You lose tonight, you lose the series. You ain't coming back from a 3-1 deficit. That's obvious, of course. The pressure is all here on Houston. Houston must get this win here. It doesn't matter. Home road, they must not go down 3-1. There were many moments throughout this 48-minute game where the Rockets could have quit. The Warriors kept shoveling dirt on them, but Houston refused to be buried after trailing by 10 in the third quarter. Houston stormed back in the fourth, largely thanks to the heroic play of CP3. The point God had bounced back, and in a big way, he scored 27 points and made all the right plays, including clutch jumpers and excellent passes in crunch time. Once the Rockets took the lead, they never gave it up, playing lockdown defense on the Warriors' final few possessions to seal the win, tying the series at 2. They had done it. The Rockets had triumphed, their first ever playoff road win against the Warriors, and now heading back home, they had a golden opportunity to regain all the momentum and put this series on ice in Game 5. The Rockets entered with a level of swag that rivaled champions. Whether it was Gerald Green shooting a scorching 3 of 5 from distance, or Clint Capella blocking Draymond, or Harden throwing down crazy dunks, or even Chris Paul hitting the shimmy on Steph Curry, This team looked unbelievable, the one it all came down to, the final minute with the Rockets leading by just one. If Houston held on and won this, all their wildest dreams would be on the brink of becoming a reality. Eliminating the Warriors was their ticket to a ring. Neither Cleveland nor Boston stood a chance. That meant a first ring for Daryl Morey, one of the greatest minds in the sport. That meant a first ring for James Harden, the MVP who had been scorned by the NBA community for years for his lack of playoff success. And lastly, that meant a ring for Chris Paul, the point guard, the player who had suffered countless miserable, unlucky playoff exits year after year. This wouldn't just be a championship, it would be the magnum opus for three of the most talented individuals, UAL, in the game of basketball. And it would all come with the crowning achievement of topping the best team ever assembled in NBA history. But some things are just too good to be true, rather than living out this fantasy. Hell struck the Rockets at the worst possible time, on a routine floater with 1 minute left. Chris Paul came down limping, holding his hamstring. Hearts dropped everywhere. The captain was down, and his body had failed him. All the grueling minutes he had been playing over the series had come back to bite him. Lost amidst this chaos was the fact that despite this injury, the Rockets somehow managed to hold on to their lead. Thanks to a Warriors late-game implosion, they had taken a 3-2 lead. A fair consolation prize for Chris Paul going down. It was the first and only time the Warriors had ever faced elimination with all four of their stars. Healthy. What many people forget about Game 6 in Golden State was that the Rockets actually played very well. In the first half, they scored 39 first-quarter points, leading by as much as 17. It's incredible rewatching the highlights from this game, hearing the audible gasps and excitement from the Rockets fans in the arena as their team was dropping buckets is fascinating. Sing up for Tucker PJ. Tucker from his favorite spot. The Warriors were being pushed towards the edge of a cliff, needing just one more shove to fall towards their embarrassing and pitiful death. But Golden State reminded Houston of who they were, outscoring the Rockets 66-25 in the second half to easily win Game 6, or erasing any memory of this ever being a competitive basketball game. All lies were now on Game 7 in Houston. This is where legacy were made. James Harden had the potential to cement himself as the man who toppled the Warriors without his partner in crime, which would have done wonders to his now controversial legacy today. On the flip side, if the Warriors lost, they'd be remembered as having an all-time meltdown. Kevin Durant would have been mercilessly torn apart for the rest of time. As with Steph Curry, everything came down to one last game. Early on in Game 7, much was going in the Rockets' favor, just 3 minutes in. Klay Thompson had already picked up 3 fouls, James Harden had canned 2 threes, and Eric Gordon, who was starting in place of Chris Paul, was rolling on offense. The Rockets looked quite nervous, but so too did the champion Warriors, who had 6 first-quarter turnovers. Houston led by 5 after 1 in quarter number 2. The Rockets continued their strong play, extending their lead to as much as 15. They were destroying the Warriors in every facet of the game. They out-rebounded them, hit free throws at a far better clip, outshot them from 3, and hustled harder. Kevin Durant and Steph Curry were invisible. Reggie Miller, who was live on the broadcast team, ripped KD, accusing him of being checked out. That man, he has to be Durant. I don't know what the defense 11 point. Then the Beard stole a pass from Draymond Green, raced down the length of the floor, and threw it down this play. Right here was the peak of the James Harden era in Houston. In this very moment, it appeared like the Rockets were well on their way to a finals trip and a subsequent championship. James Harden was going to avenge his years of playoff misery in spectacular fashion and cap off his MVP season with a ring. Kevin Durant later admitted in an interview to entering the locker room at halftime and wondering if this was it. Yeah, we got down 15, walked into that locker room like, oh, this can't be it, like we're losing with OCP. We had big dreams of just destroy the league, and we're going to end up like this. But during this 15-minute intermission, something changed within both these squads. The Warriors gained a sudden burst of energy, while the Rockets, who had controlled the entire first half, had their powers inexplicably ripped away from them. The second half of this game is one of the most excruciating, heart-wrenching 30 minutes of play I've ever seen to this day. I watched this game over and over, and each time I'm left speechless by how it all transpired. First, let's address the obvious. The refs in this game were horrible. Scott Foster and his crew made a series of terrible calls and lack of calls mostly benefiting the Warriors. Whether or not this was deliberate is up for debate, but what is for sure is that there were at least 9 missed foul calls that destroyed any momentum. Houston was trying to build up. The refs missed obvious illegal screen set by Jordan Bell and ignored clear fouls on James Harden's three-point attempts. It was so obvious that broadcaster Chris Webber called it out on multiple occasions. Live about the screen by Yord Scream. I hear a whistle, so apparently it was a good screen. Oh yeah, outside of officiating, as the minutes ticked by in the third quarter, something alarming became clear to the millions of viewers watching around the globe. The Rockets were missing threes at a frightening rate, while the Warriors were starting to hit theirs. 8 minutes went by, and the 11-point lead that the Rockets had established had evaporated. Golden State was now in front. Once on top, the Warriors started going on a tear, embarking on a devastating 15-2 run that sent the arena into a complete shock. Steph Curry annihilated Houston's defense, specifically targeting Ryan Anderson, the old and slow veteran, putting him in the blender. Curry fires for 3. Yes, they are on fire. Head coach Mike D'Antoni was rocked in fear while Chris Paul was enraged on the sidelines, slamming his hand down on the bench in utter disbelief. All he could do was helplessly sit and watch as his one and only chance at a championship was slowly slipping from his grasp. Pure mental torture. Much to the light of the Warriors, the team with the best offensive rating in the league scored just 15 points on 6 of 25 shooting in the third compared to 33 from the defending champs. By the fourth quarter, the writing was already on the wall. The Rockets had collapsed in historic fashion. They had infamously missed 27 straight three-pointers, the most in a row ever by any team. They had crumbled from sheer exhaustion without Chris Paul to playmake on the floor. Houston's already fatigued players didn't have the stamina required to create their own shots. On the other hand, Golden State did exactly what they needed to do and came away with a victory thanks to their flawless execution under pressure in a game where the Warriors were favored. Somehow their eventual victory still ended up being stunning. Trevor shot 0 of 12, Gerald Green was 1 of 7, and Ryan Anderson was abused on defense. James Harden was in efficient shooting. 2 of 13 from 3, he had squandered his chance at greatness. In the end, no one remembers Houston's early 15-point lead for the bad officiating. All they remember is who came out on top and the 27 missed threes. History is written by the victors, and the Golden State Warriors earned their ticket to the finals, later winning it all and officially becoming a dynasty. Even now, the Rockets have never gotten over this loss. Nearly 8 months after the fact, Daryl Morey said he was still processing it, and a year and a half later, he said that if you replay the series, they would have won it 60 to 70% of the time. Good coat buddy entering the 2018-19 season. Though Houston had a chance to redeem themselves against a far more beatable Warriors team. Both the 2019 Warriors and Rockets were far less dominant than they were a year prior. The impact of Golden State's supporting cast diminished severely, thanks to aging, while beef between Kevin Durant and Draymond Green plagued the locker room. The Warriors, who once looked unstoppable, appeared vulnerable for the first time in years on Houston's end. Chris Paul declined significantly as a result of the hamstring injury that, along with injuries to other players, forced James Harden to carry a huge load offensively. Similarly, Houston's already weak depth had gotten worse thanks to the loss of Trevor Ariza in free agency. By the time the playoffs rolled around, Golden State was favored to win the West. However, it wasn't uncommon to find fans who believed that the Rockets could capitalize on the Warriors' turmoil, especially with how well James Harden had played against the Warriors at various points throughout the season. He got it. James Harden, a flamethrower, incredible-ish. Sure enough, in round 2, they met once more. The result was somehow even more humiliating for Houston. The injury bug, which had struck the Rockets in 2018, Golden State just as hard in a crucial Game 5, where Kevin Durant suffered a calf injury. Arguably the best Warriors player was knocked out. But Houston failed to take advantage with the series. Then tied at 2, the Rockets dropped 2 in a row to a list. Warriors to lose the series, the backcourt of Stephen Clay even eviscerated CP3. and Harden combining for 112 points together in games 5 and 6 in the closeout game. 6, Steph Curry stole the show, scoring 33 second-half points after going scoreless in the first. The Splash Bros took over in the clutch, sending Houston to Cancun with a series of gut-punching threes. On the contrary, Chris Paul completely disappeared in the crucial Game 5 that Houston lost. CP3 shot 3 of 14, which was a back-breaking performance. James Harden played well, averaging a stellar 35 per game in the series. It's just that the Rockets' supporting cast had completely deteriorated around him. This was an all-time embarrassment for the Rockets franchise, and yet another flex scene of the championship muscle by the Dynasty Warriors after Game 7 of the 2018 Western Conference Finals. Both these franchises went down two very different paths, the winners, Steph Curry, and the Warriors steamroll, to ring number 3-3. Then after regrouping 1 of 4th in 2022 on the flip side, the Rockets led by James Harden never again reached their elite 2018 form, suffering 2 straight second-round exits, then getting hit with the James Harden trade request. In short, the winner of the 2018 Western Conference Finals went down the path of endless praise and glory, while the loser ultimately faced implosion and failure. The butterfly effect was crazy. Without a doubt, these two will forever be intertwined in what I consider to be the NBA's greatest rivalry. In the end, it's these rivalries that push the game of basketball to new heights. As players rise to the occasion, so do the moments that become etched in NBA history. The story of these battles is far from over. Who knows what rivalry will capture our imaginations next?